a wonderful member of the United States Senate, Bob Corker.
Jane, thank you very much. I thank you for your leadership on national security issues, your broad-mindedness, and your friendship, and I really appreciate being here today. You're right. I'm missing the last part of a committee meeting today that Sarah's testifying in. I will say I met with her, and I've already had her testimony and met with her prior to being in Afghanistan and Pakistan this weekend, but I knew that being late for something Jane had organized was not going to be good for my health. So I'm glad to be here today, and I'm glad to be here with such esteemed panelists. And I've always learned, especially in this job, that when you have people like this here to contribute, it's best to hear from them and to hear from you. So I'm going to make some very brief comments. But as Jane very articulately laid out, and she did this in our committee, as she mentioned some time ago, the AUMF that we're operating under right now is 60 words long and was passed in September of 2001. And on a recent trip through northern Africa with our staff to Senegal and Mali and Algeria and Tunisia, when you look at not only the activities that we have to some degree underway now, but the activities we're going to have underway in the future, almost everyone, top to bottom, would say that there's a very thin thread between that AUMF that was authored, 60 words, back in 2001 to where we are today. What's happened over time with Congress in general is that we have no ownership whatsoever over the conflicts that exist. And for what it's worth, some people like it that way. I mean, the fact is, if you just look at what's happening right now, for instance, with with Syria, where the administration, instead of having to come forward to Congress and to try to deal with this issue in a public way and to generate some degree of ownership by those in Congress, by the way, administrations have been doing this for some time, so this should not be perceived as in any way partisan. What they're doing instead, and of course it's on the front page of every paper, it's not very covert, but is dealing with it through the intelligence committees, and actually just a handful of folks involved in intelligence, not even the full committees, to try to generate funding and therefore alleviate Congress having real ownership. And for what it's worth, in fairness, I was at an event yesterday talking to a very key person in Congress relative to that type of activity, and because it's tough, quote, 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 back home, he's just fine with that. He'd rather it not come to Congress. To me, that is a totally feckless place for Congress to be. I think what that does is it keeps, candidly, the public from really being informed as to the decisions that we're making that are very important. We have an outstanding military that is willing to sacrifice life and limb, and we have certainly wonderful Foreign Service officers. And to have them out in harm's way and the American people not even fully understand why we're doing what we're doing, and certainly for Congress to have no ownership, that is a problem. We recently had some debates on the floor which to me were almost surreal. We had a debate, a filibuster actually, for a long period of time over drone attacks on cafes in Houston, an issue that I never really thought about, okay? And I don't in any way, look, I think that was a fine thing, and I'm not criticizing the folks involved, but the point is that when Congress has no ownership over the activities that are taking place, whether it's drone or in other ways, sometimes Congress is able to debate and say some things that have no basis in reality and certainly do not contribute to the national debate and our national interest. So look, I'll stop with this last statement. We've had some discussions about developing a new AUMF. I do not want to be involved in anything that undermines our national interest. I don't. And I realize that Congress is very, very divided. I'm on the Foreign Relations Committee as ranking member. Somebody the other day said, well, Senator Corker is here to give the Republican perspective on foreign policy. And I thought, I don't think there is a Republican position on foreign policy. I looked down the dais, for instance, and we have John McCain and Rand Paul on the Foreign Relations Committee, and I don't think you could get, have a greater difference in point of view, both of which, by the way, are respected. So I think, in order to move down the path to look at a new authorization for the use of military force that really causes Congress to own the activities that we're conducting around the world and for the American people to be informed of those, I think is a healthy thing. At the same time, I think basing that on some hearings that we have in the beginning to sort of develop a little bit of a foundation to ensure that we're going to be able to get to some place that is also in our national interest. So I thank you for the opportunity to discuss this and any other topic you'd like to discuss. I'm really honored to be here with people that I know to be of great intellect and with a lot of knowledge. And with that, hello, Sarah. How was the hearing? Good to see you. Thank you. With that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I was going to say that you and Neil were going to have to work twice as hard, but Sarah has rescued you. Thank you very much.
Not the first time.